So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we're going to be going over some popular exam questions on the algebra strand at higher level GCSE. Now you can download the questions by clicking on the link in the description below and have an attempt at these questions before watching these videos so you can test your current knowledge. Now before we start working through this first part of working through these algebra higher level maths questions, it's worth mentioning that this particular task and set of questions is to help you establish what it is you know and what you don't know about algebra. Now, it's not every single question is going to be included in this particular video, but hopefully it should give you some insight and some general ideas of where to maybe focus your revision and what you should feel more comfortable in doing when approaching algebra questions in your exam. So looking at question 1, it says circle the correct words to complete the sentence, and it says x squared plus 3x equals 16. Now because there is only one letter, you can see although there is an x squared and an x, it's still one letter, and you've got an equal sign, then this is going to be an equation. It then says circle the correct words to complete this sentence, and it says v equals pi r squared h. Now because there is an equal sign and multiple letters, it's going to be a formula. Then for 1c, it says circle the correct words to complete the sentence, and it says x plus 3 squared, and then we've got our identity sort of symbol, so that there is going to be an identity. And then for 1d, it says circle the correct words to complete the sentence of 2x plus 3y. Well, because there's multiple letters and there's no equals, it's going to be an expression. Then for question 2, it says, let me just get rid of that cursor, it says a or b to the power of 4 equals 16r to the power of 20. So this one is comparing coefficients. So first things first, let's expand the bracket. So we have a to the power of 4 and then times r to the power of 4b, and that equals 16r20. Now looking at this, it means that a to the power of 4 is going to equal 16. So a to the power of 4 equals 16. So a equals the fourth root of 16. Now remember, that's fourth root, not the 4 like thirds. So then that gives me an answer of 2. So a equals 2. And if 4b equals 20, then that means that b is going to equal 5. Then moving on to question 3, it says show that for when x is not equal to 0. Now the reason why they write this is just because the one number you can't divide by is 0, and if x was to equal 0, then we would have 0 as our denominator, which we mathematically cannot have. So try not to pay too much attention to what I've highlighted in yellow, and that's just to make it mathematically sound. So although it has no impact on how you answer the question, but basically it's saying that x, the denominator, can't equal 0. So it says that this algebraic expression can be written in the form as a single fraction. So what we want to do here is have our common denominator. Now how do we get our common denominator? Well, we find our common denominator being 6x. Now you may have gone for 6x squared, but it's entirely up to you, but I would say that you can definitely make 6x from each of those denominators. Now how do I do it with the first one? Well, for here I multiply it by 2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2. So that then becomes 2 lots of 2x plus 4. And then with this second fraction, I'm going to multiply that by 3 over 3. So then it becomes 3 lots of 5, which ultimately is going to be 15. Then simplifying the numerators, we get 2x plus 8. And then we get minus 15 all over 6x. And then if I neaten up the numerator, I get 2x. And then 8 minus 15 is minus 7, and that's all over 6x. And then if I compare this to how they want me to express my answer, I can see that a equals 2, b equals minus 7, and c equals 6. Moving on to question 4, it says s and t are positive integers. X plus s multiplied by x minus t is expanded and simplified. The answer is x squared minus kx minus 40, where k is a positive integer. Work out the smallest possible value of k. Well, first things first, with quadratics, this constant is made up by multiplying these two letters together, or these two terms together. So if I just have a heading of s and t, Now, all I need to do is, I know that st equals minus 40. So if I then think of all the numbers that multiply to give me 40, so I've got 10 and 4, I've got 40 and 1, I've got 2 and 20, and I've got 8, and I've got 5. So they're all the combinations. Obviously, I can reverse those numbers. So I could have 4 and 10, 1 and 40, 2 and 20, and 5 and 8. Now, with this, because I know that k is positive, it means that the bigger number out of the two is going to be positive. So then that means the smaller number is going to be negative. So then if I add these two numbers together, I'm going to get 6, I'm going to get 39, I'm going to get 18, and I'm going to get 3. Now the question is asking which is the smallest possible value of k. Well, the smallest possible value is going to be 3. So all I need to do in the answer is just write 3. Moving on to question 5, it says expand and simplify. And here I've got my double brackets. So again, whether you use a grid or using loops, it's entirely up to you, but we get 12x squared plus 18x minus 2x minus 3. And then if I neaten all that up, I get 12x squared plus 16x minus 3. Now moving on to question 5b, it says solve. And so here I can either do it by using the quadratic formula or by factorising. This one, let's see if it does factorise. Well, to find the magic number is going to be minus 12. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together give me minus 12 and added together to give me positive 1. And the reason why I've got 1 is from there. So the numbers I'm going to be thinking of are going to be 4 and 3. Now for me to have minus 12, one of the numbers need to be negative, but because the coefficient of x is positive, it means the bigger number is going to be positive. So here it's going to be minus 3. So then substituting that all in, I get 4x squared plus 4x minus 3x minus 3. Then it's just a case of factorising the pairs. So I'll take 4x out, which end up with x plus 1. And then taking the 3 out, I get x plus 1 again. So then factorising this, I get 4x minus 3 and x plus 1. Now we need to remember that it is an equation, so all of these need to be equal to 0. And then I just need to solve it. So solving this, x is going to equal 3 over 4. And solving this, x is going to equal minus 1. And if I use the quadratic formula, it would give me the same answer. Moving on to question 6, it says expand and simplify. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this bit out first. Now it's really important that you recognise that this is a double bracket. So I've got x minus 4 and then 2x plus 3y and 2x plus 3y. Then if I just leave the x minus 4 to begin with and expanding this out, I get 4x squared plus 6xy plus 6xy plus 9y squared. Then simplifying that further, I get x minus 4, 4x squared plus 12xy plus 9y squared. Now if you got to that stage right off the cuff, that'll be absolutely fine. But it's always important that you do take your time because it's very easy to make a mistake, particularly if you're doing all that in your head. So what's left for me to then do is just expand the brackets. So multiplying everything by x, I get 4x cubed plus 12x squared y plus 9xy squared. And then multiplying out the minus 4, in which I end up with minus 16x squared minus 48xy and minus 36y squared. And then it's just a case of checking if any of those simplify. None of them do, so there is my final answer. Now moving on to question 7, it says you are given that x squared plus ax plus b is algebraically identically to x minus 5 all squared plus 7. Work out the values of a and b. So what we need to do here is basically expand this right hand side. So if I just write the right hand side, and that's going to equal x minus 5, x minus 5. Remember, it's double brackets, plus 7. So that then becomes x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus 7. So that gives me x squared minus 10x plus 32. So then all that's left for me to then do is to compare the coefficients. So a is the coefficient of x, which is minus 10, and b is the constant, which is 32. And then just be mindful of the signs, but there is our answer. Moving on to question 8, it says the first 3 terms of a sequence and the nth term are, and if we're going to our term, it says clearly explain clearly why n plus 1th term of the sequence is going to be n plus 1 and n plus 2 over n plus 2. Now the reason for this is because the numerator increases by 1, so n and then plus 1 equals n plus 1, and then the denominator, starting with n plus 1, increases by 1. So that's going to be n plus 1, don't know why I've put a bracket there, let me get rid of that, and plus 1, which is n plus 2. And there we go. Then for question 8b, it says show the difference between n plus 1th term and the nth term is this. Well, we know that this is n plus 1 over n plus 2. This is the next term, so the nth term is n plus 1. So then all we then need to do is just take these two things away from each other. So we've got n plus 1 over n minus 2 minus n plus 1. Now what we want to do is have a common denominator. So our common denominator is going to be n plus 1, n plus 2. Now to get that denominator, I need to multiply this first fraction by n plus 1 over n plus 1. So then the numerator then becomes n plus 1, n plus 1. And we multiply this second fraction by n minus 2. So then that's going to be minus n plus 2. So then from this, what we then need to do is just simply expand the numerator out. So that's going to be n squared plus 2n plus 1 minus n squared plus 2n all over n plus 1, n plus 2. That should be a plus. Let me just correct that. And then cancelling things out, I'm left with 1 over n plus 1, n plus 2, which is what they wanted me to show. Then for 8c, it says 2 terms of the sequence have a difference of 1 over 10. Which are the 2 terms? So for this question, what I would do is I would pick one of the terms and then just add 1/10 to it and see if your answer has a difference of 1 between the numerator and the denominator. So pick a term, add 1 over 10, and then what you're looking for is a fraction where you have n plus 1 over, I should say, n over n plus 1. So here, if let's get the calculator out. So the first fraction is a half. So if I do 1 over 2 plus 1 over 10 equals, now you can see what I'm looking for is a difference between the numerator and the denominator being plus 1. So here the difference is 2, so that's not going to work. So I try the next one, which is 2/3. So I try 2 over 3 plus 1 over 10 equals, and that gives me 23 over 30. So again, that's not going to work. So try the next one, 3 over 4 plus 1 over 10. That doesn't work because again I got a difference of 3. Then try the next one, which is 4 over 5 plus 1 over 10. And that equals 9 over 10. As you can see, that has got a difference of 1, so there is my answer. So it's 4 over 5 and 9 over 10. Then moving on to question 9, it says 2x plus 3y squared minus 2x minus 3y squared equals 360. Show that xy is a multiple of 5 for 4 marks. So first things first, let's expand the brackets out. So 2x plus 3y squared is going to equal double brackets, so it's 2x plus 3y, 2x plus 3y. And if I expand that out correctly, I get 4x squared plus 12xy plus 9y squared. Then if I do the second bracket, which is this, now again I'm not going to ignore the minus, I'm just going to leave it as that to begin with. So here I get 2x minus 3y, 2x minus 3y, and that's going to give me 4x squared minus 12xy plus 9y squared. Now for this, what I then need to do is just take the two things away. Now I'm going to put brackets around that second one, but I just need to take the two things away. So I get 4x plus 12xy plus 9y squared minus 4x minus 12xy plus 9y squared, and that all equals 360. Now if I multiply out the negative sign, I get 4x squared plus 12xy plus 9y squared minus 4x squared plus 12xy minus 9y squared equals 360. Now at this stage something should cancel out, so the 4x squared cancels out, the 9y squared cancels out, so all I'm left with is 12xy plus 12xy equals 360, which equals 24xy equals 360. Then if I divide the 24, I get xy equals 15, and 15 is a multiple of 5, and so there xy is a multiple of 5. And you can just write 5 times 3 if you wanted to. Then for question 10, it says f of x equals 2x minus 3 and g of x equals x squared. Show that the inverse function of f when it's 55 is equal to f, the composite function of fg of 4. So first things first, what we need to do is work out the inverse function. So if I just write the inverse function of x, now how we do that is we make the function of f equal to y. And then what I then want to do is just rearrange this to make x the subject. So I end up with y plus 3 over 2 equals x, and then just swap the x with inverse function x and swap the y with x. So I end up with something that looks like this. Now if I then substitute 55 into that, so the inverse function of 55, let me just get rid of that and neaten it up, of 55 equals 55 plus 3 divided by 2. That gives me an answer of 29. So then if I then work out fg of 4, well, fg of x is when I substitute g of x and replace it in the x in f. So that's going to be 2 lots. Now instead of writing x, I'm going to write g of x, which is 2x squared minus 3. So then the function is 2x squared minus 3. Now I then want to work out what fg of 4 is. So if I substitute 4 into this, I get 2 times 16, which is 32, minus 3, which leaves me with an answer of 29. So 29 equals 29, and there we go. Moving on to question 11, and let me just zoom out so we can actually see this question. It says that minus 310 is a point on line L, 4, 0 and 610 are points on line M, L and M are parallel, and the question is asking us to work out the equation of L, giving our answer in the form of y equals mx plus c. So the first thing that's left for me to do first is to first of all work out the gradient of M. So the gradient of M equals the gradient of L because they're parallel. So then if I draw my triangle and using the coordinates, I can see the base is going to be the difference between the x ordinates, which is 2, and the height of the triangle is the difference between the y ordinates, which is 10. So the gradient then is going to be 10 over 2, which equals 5. So M equals 5. So then using y minus y1 equals mx minus x1, we get y minus, and we're using this coordinate here, so it's going to be y minus 10 equals 5x minus 3 becomes plus 3, so I get y minus 10 equals 5x plus 15, and that gives me a formula or equation of 5x plus 25, and there is my final answer for that one. Then moving on to question 12, it says the gradient of the line OR is 7 over 4. PQ is perpendicular to OR. P is the point 14, 0. And the question asking us to work out the equation of line PQ. So first of all, let's work out the gradient of PQ. So the gradient of PQ is going to be the negative reciprocal of 7 over 4. Now when you're doing reciprocal of a fraction, all you need to do is just flip the fraction so it then becomes 4 over 7. And then change the sign. So the gradient then is minus 4 over 7. Now we know that the coordinate is 14, 0. So then using m equals minus 4 over 7 and the coordinate of 14, 0, I'm then going to substitute that into y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And then substituting those in, I get y minus 0 equals minus 4 over 7 x minus 14. Then expanding the brackets, I get y equals minus 4 over 7x. Then minus 4 times 14 is 28, which is going to be 56. So it's going to be plus 56 over 7. 56 over 7 is 8. So it's y equals minus 4 over 7x plus 8. Now what we've just written there is the equation form of y equals mx plus c, but the question particularly specifies that it wants us to give our answer in the form of ax plus by equals c, where a, b and c are integers. So what we need to do is basically multiply everything by 7. So here we're going to end up with 7y minus 4 over 7 times 7 is minus 4, so it's going to be minus 4x, and then 8 times 7 is 56. So then all I need to do is put the x's and the y's all on one side. So I've got 4x plus 7y equals 56, and there is my final answer. Then moving on to question 13, it says the quadratic curve intersects the axes at minus 3, 0, 3, 0 and 0, 18. Work out the equation of the curve. Now for this is involving graph transformations. So looking at this, in order for us to have roots of minus 3 and 3, then y needs to have the values of x plus 3 and x minus 3. Now the problem with this is that this will give a U shape and we want an N shape. So that means I need to change the sign of the function, which gives minus. But the problem is that when I expand this out, I'm going to end up with minus 9 and I want positive 18. So what I then need to do is, rather than having 9, I want 18. I need to times that by 2. So then this then becomes a equation of y equals minus 2, and then it's going to be x squared, and then we can recognize that this is a difference of 2 squares, so we can either leave it as that, or I can write x squared minus 9, in which I could write my answer as either of those two, which would be fine. You could also expand it out So I can end up with minus 2x squared plus 18, and that would be fine as well. So any of those three would be fine to get 3 marks. Then moving on to question 14, it says the equation of the curve is y equals x plus 3 squared plus 5. Write down the coordinates to the turning point. Well, the x ordinate is always the value of x that makes the bracket equal to 0. So x is going to equal minus 3. And the y ordinate is always the constant at the end, which is 5. So I'm looking for minus 3, 5, which is my last option. Moving on to question 15, it says the turning point of a graph is y equals x plus a squared plus b has an x ordinate of minus 2. 3, 1 is another point on the graph. Work out the y ordinate of the turning point. So if the x ordinate is minus 2, then that means that a equals positive 2. So what I end up with is x plus 2 squared plus b, and that equals y. So then if I expand this out, I end up with y equals, and it's going to be x squared plus, and it's going to be 4x plus 4 plus b. And the reason why I've got this is because x plus 2, and I get x squared plus 2x plus 4, which ultimately will give me what I've got in the brackets. Now, I know what the coordinate that lies on the line, which is 3, 1. So if I substitute x equals 3 and y equals 1 into this, I end up with 1 equals, and it's going to be 3 squared plus 12 plus 4 plus b. Then simplifying that, get 1, 9 plus 12 plus 4 plus b. Collecting all of this, I get 1 equals, and then 9 plus 12 is 21, plus 4 is 25. So b equals minus 24. And there are my two values. So the y ordinate is minus 24. Then moving on to question 16.8, says circle the possible equation for the graph shown below. And this is a reciprocal graph, so it's going to be our second option. Then for question 16b, it says this is a graph of y equals 2 to the power of x. And if you're not sure if you're doing this on the screen, it's y equals 2 to the power of x, which is an exponential graph. All exponential graphs intercept at 0, 1 unless there's a graph transformation. So this is going to be 0, 1. Then moving on to question 17, it says here is a sketch of the graph of y equals cos x for the values of 0 to 360. It says for a, cos x equals cos 60. Work out the value of x when it's between 90 and 360. Well, cos 60 is here. So this is 60, and this is the value of cos 60. Now if I project across, that the next time that it's going to be that value is going to be at this point here, which is at 300. So the answer for x is going to be 300. It then says for 17b, cos x equals minus cos 60. So if I find minus cos 60, well, cos 60 is there. So the minus cos 60 is going to be here. Oh, that's not a straight line at all. Now, cos 60 equals a half. So minus cos 60 is going to equal minus a half. So if I just draw that line straight there. Now in terms of the region it's wanting it between 180 and 360. So I'm wanting the region that is from here to here. And as you can see, intercepts at one point there. So it's going to be whatever number this is. And that's going to be 270, take away 30. So that's going to be 240. Then moving on to question 18, it says the graph of y equals sine x, and it says for 0, 360 is shown. On the grid below, draw the graph of 1 plus sine x, and it's giving me the original curve. So for this, what I need to do is basically shift it up one place because I'm adding 1 to the function. So if I pick the key points on the sine curve, which is what I'm doing there. I'm going to shift those points so it's 1 up. So it's now going to be something that looks like this. And then all that's left for me to do is just to join those points up. Hopefully yours will be a lot more accurate than mine, but it should look something like that. Then for question 18b, it says on the grid below, draw the graph of y equals sine x plus 90. So here I'm adding something to the x, so it's going to be a shift of 90 to the left. So again, if I pick my key points, and what I'm going to do to each of those points is just move them across 90 degrees to the left. So this point will become here, that point will become there, this point is there, this point is now going to be here, and that point is now going to be there. So all that's left for me to then do is to join those points up, in which I should get something that looks like that. Then moving on to question 19, it says the number of items n made in 1 hour by a machine is given by n equals 60 over t, where t is the time in minutes the machine takes to make one item. The value of t changes for different types of item. On the grid, draw the graph of 60 over t for the values of 1 to 4. Well, for the first point, when n equals 1, t equals 1, 2, 3, 4, then n is going to equal 60 over 1, 60 over 2, 60 over 3, and 60 over 4. Now those values, 60 over 1 is 60, 60 divided by 2 is 30, 60 divided by 3 is 20, and 60 divided by 4 is 15. So the points I then want to plot is 1, 60, so that's there. The next one is 2, 30, which is there. Then 3, 20, which is there. And 4, 15, which is there. And then all that's left for me to then do is to join those points up, being as accurate as possible. It then says the machine takes 3 minutes 30 seconds to make one item. Use the graph to estimate the value of n. So for this I need to find 3.5, which is here. I then draw a vertical line, preferably straight, unlike the one I've drawn on the screen. And then what you then want to do is to project it going across. And I would say that my answer is probably around 17.5. But again, you're probably looking at an answer between 17 and 18. One thing you could do is just simply substitute it back into the formula. But you could do 60 divided by 3.5. But the problem with this is because it says use the graph, you have to make sure you are using the graph. And n needs to be a whole number. So again, either go for 17 or 18. Obviously, you can't have half a product, so it's either going to be 17 or 18. Then moving on to question 20, it says that Leo wants to draw the graph of y equals 2 to the power x for the values of 0 to 4. Here is his graph. Make one criticism about his graph. Now the error that he's made, if you've not spotted it already, is basically the last point. So the last point is plotted incorrectly as 2 to the power of 4 is 16, not 15. Now it's always difficult to find this criticism because usually if you look at past paper, if you've done lots of past paper questions, usually errors are usually in the scale, labeling of the scale, and then it goes on to plotting of the points. So again, both those two scales are absolutely fine. It's just the plotting of the points, and it's just sod's law that's going to be the last point after all that work for 1 mark.